Folks, we are live. Thank you for the patience. Sorry, one or more of our members here had to tap the lizard. And look at that, 13. We made people wait. We have an unlucky number 13 as we go live. Thank you all for that.
Blame me.
I am Eric Tenkar, your bartender in the OSR. Stage right in front of me, in front of you, is none other than Bad Mike Battalato, my once a week work spouse. And below us, not because he's less than us, he should probably be above, but it doesn't work that way on the screen.
Yes.
Is none other than Levi Combs.
Hello,
and
everyone.
as they say that, somehow
Levi,
we only have
the
two
great,
live viewers. So I don't know.
the great Levi Combs.
The great Levi Combs.
Listen, if there's an
Yes,
OSR totem pole, I'm all the way at the. I might be under the totem pole.
But you know what? But everybody's building off you. You're supporting everybody else.
You're going to be a special guest. You're a special guest in North Texas this year. That's nothing to spin at.
Sunday for sure.
Yes. So he's a special guest in North Texas this year. That's the one thing he will be, if nothing else. This week I want to talk about North Texas a little bit this week too, but not right now. But I'm just saying, Eric, if I could pontificate about North Texas a little bit. If Gary's here, Gary can pop into the chat.
Gary usually comes in somewhere around like mid stride. So,
but right now we're talking to Levi, and why do we have Levi on? Well, we just like to have Levi on. It's the holiday. It's the holiday spirit. Levi has he's got a Kickstarter coming up next week. So let me tell you about this Kickstarter. I'm going to tell you my personal reminiscences about this Kickstarter, and this is pertinent. This is very pertinent, and this is why I love me some Levi. So I did not know anything about Levi. Casey told me I need to look out for this guy named Levi. I know this guy named Levi. He's a really good writer, and he wrote something called Jungle Tomb and the Mummy Ride. So he said, you need to back this. This is really good. So I backed it. I got my brother to back it, Rob to back, because he loves anything with mummies, jungles, and tombs. So like the three buzzwords there, Robert was in. He's like, oh, I'm in. But it was for 5e. I don't play 5e, but I thought, okay, this guy, he got really good praise. I'm gonna back it. So I backed Jungle Tomb and Mummy Ride. Great thing, but when it gets to me, it's in a brown envelope with no backing in it, no plastic on it, and it's literally beat to hell. That copy is still in my bathroom, by the way. It's my bathroom reading because it was so tore up.
Yeah.
And so I just sent Levi a little message. Just said, hey, just let you know, I know you haven't done very many Kickstarters, and I gave you a few helpful suggestions. Backing board, put some plastic on it, and he apologized profusely. He sent me a copy, and the next copy had backing boards and had plastic on it, and it was in a hard envelope. And I like to think that my bitching, that little bit hopefully helped you in the realm of Kickstarter to avoid future issues, because ever since then, I've never had any problem with your stuff. And I always appreciated the way you listened and didn't say, well, too bad, dude, this is the way I ship,
Oh, no, man. I was when you sent me that, I was so embarrassed because I was such a rookie. And I had only backed one Kickstarter before I launched my own Kickstarter. So I never had a mail order business. I was just such a rookie and had no idea what I was doing. It's really, really, really lucky that the frogs took me underneath their wing and were like, several of them were like, hey, you need to do it this way, and this way, because it completely saved me. I was really lucky to have Zach and Matt and Casey and you just giving me little pieces of advice that helped set me on the right path. And that's no joke.
The great thing was,
dude.
Well, the great thing too is Mummy 2 Jungle. It's a great module. It's awesome. It's very pulpy. I was not used to your writing style yet, and so I just remember reading that, going, "Man, this is pure pulp." And then of course, the more I got to know you, I realized you're a huge pulp aficionado. That's kind of your aesthetic for your work, and so yeah, it was a very pulp feel, very cool module. And my brother Robert liked it. He doesn't even know what 5e is, and he loved it. Like I said, all he had to do was say Mummy, Tomb, and Jungle, and he was in. So yeah, we loved it. We loved it, and so I've been obviously I've been backing all your stuff since then, and you just had some really great stuff. You had your Mutant Plan 9 from Outer Space module that's just great. You had Godzilla versus King Kong module, as I call it. I mean, you've had your stuff's great. I mean, but you know,
I don't know about
and
they're definitely interesting. You won't fall asleep playing them.
Well, what I like about your stuff, Levi, is it's not like everybody else's stuff. I like that. I like the pulp aesthetic there. It's really cool. Talk a little bit about that. I mean, where does that come from, and why all the pulpiness and that pulpy goodness in your stuff?
Yeah, I would say my main two influences, as far as that goes, is really like the old pulp stories, but a heavy dose of like Lovecraft and Howard and Moorcock and Zelazny, a lot of those Appendix N authors, some of them, but not all of them. And then I kind of tie that into like a B movie aesthetic. Like I really like that 60s, 70s grindhouse feel, that scratchy and unfinished, and you never knew what to expect out of those movies, which is what I hope that you never know to expect out of my modules. So that when you get them, you're getting a little taste of like, man, I don't know how this is going to go off, but you marry that to the pulp stuff, and especially the Howard and Lovecraftian and Moorcock and Roger Zelazny was he's not so much pulp, but he's that weird fantasy. His stuff as a teenager was super influential on me. Dilvish the Damned and the Amber series.
Right.
And what was that great one? It was like the crap. What was it? It's the inspiration for the first edition Thief.
Cudgel, the Cudgel stuff. Dying Earth, right?
Not Adwand, not Dilvish the Damned. Shadowjack.
Shadowjack. Okay, Zelazny. Yeah, we're talking. I'm sorry, I was going Vance, and you're going Zelazny. Yeah, Shadowjack. Yeah.
Where you look at a lot of the stuff that was happening in Shadowjack hadn't been written about before. A lot of the abilities, kind of the cool, like how he would meld into shadows and then reappear. That really interesting stuff that wasn't being written about prior to that. That made it, and you could tell that Gary read that, or somebody along the line read that.
Yeah. It's an Appendix N. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Really
I'm sorry. I wanted to do something real quick. The modules I referred to, that I talked about earlier, was Occurrence at Howling Crater. That's the creepy mutant family that lives in the mountains. Take off. It's really great. And then Escape from Skull Canyon Island. That's the big giant monster stuff. But also you wrote something called Horror Out of Hag's Jaw that I thought was really good, and that was probably the second thing I read of yours. I remember I read Jungle Tomb and then read Hag's Jaw, and that, even though it was a Frog God Games module, it came out under the Necromancer Games heading, and it was kind of a dark. It's D&D, but it's dark D&D. It's nothing. You're not fighting some orcs or goblins or anything. It's got some darkness to it.
I've always felt that that Lovecraft lends it. So the creatures are so insane and radical that I've always felt that those stories, the old ones and the deep ones, and all the little gelatinous horrors that are seeping out of holes in the bottom of churches and ruined churchyards and whatnot, all that stuff really lends itself to D&D if it's in the right setting. So I wanted to do a kind of an homage to Lovecraft because I'm a massive fan of his work, and all the the extended Lovecraft writing circle, all those Clark Ashton Smith and Howard and Ramsey Campbell, all those guys. So I just wanted to do really just kind of a love letter to that, but frame it in a playable D&D kind of way. So
sure.
That's how Horror Out of Hag's Jaw came. It's a little dark. It's actually a little darker than I wanted to, but the reason for that, and I'm not trying to bring the conversation down, was that while I was writing it, my mother passed away.
Oh.
So during the time I was going back and forth to the hospital, and I'd be all in the hospital all day with her, and then I would come back to basically her empty house, and I would need something to do because I didn't have any friends in this town. I didn't know anybody. Mm-hmm. So I would just sit down and I would write out, type out bits of Hag's Jaw until I got sleepy. And then later I kind of put it all together. So if it comes across as having a dark tone, then there's definitely a reason for that, a little bit of inside pool on that.
Now, another thing you've written recently is Hearsay of Rot, which I'm going to admit I have not read yet. Levi, I'm sorry. Please forgive me on that one. But that came out this year, and that was written for Frog Guy. I think you did a 5e and OSR version of that.
5e,
no,
5
Castles of Crusades version.
Yeah.
Okay, and then a 5e and then an OSR version. Okay.
Yeah, 3 different.
What is Hearsay of Rot about? I mean, I haven't read it yet, so it's on my pile, my gigantic pile over here I've got, oh God, I got a stack over here. So yeah, it's on my pile.
Well, no, Zach and Edwin, they had this idea for a Halloween module. You guys do one every year. And I always thought it would be cool to do a module that really felt like Halloween. It felt like candy corn and spiders and witches and skeletons and pumpkins, and it had an aesthetic of black and orange, and it could be filled with Halloween movie tropes, and then kind of hey there you go, and then could be filled with like homages to Halloween in general. So I reached out to my friend John McGuire, and he's a very talented writer. And I said, hey, would you, you're the most Halloween guy I know. I mean, he has a Count Chocula tattoo. Like he's absolutely the most Halloween dude that I know. And he's a really gifted writer. So I said, hey, why don't we tackle this together? And then we'll just, we'll split the money or whatever. But really it was an opportunity to work on something cool, like being able to have an homage to Hammer horror and old school Halloween, like I remember it in the 70s and 80s, was extremely attractive to me as like something to work on. So we just launched into it and immediately found that we had way too many cool ideas to throw into one thing. But we narrowed it down to what our favorites were. We broke it up into 3 parts so that you could either play a very short con module, if you kind of shoved it all together, or you could play 3 really good 4-hour sessions. You could get a run out of the book. It wouldn't just be one session. And it worked out. We had a good time play testing it. We had a good time writing it. And thank God for Casey Christopherson, because he got some really talented artists on it. He really did. And he understood the aesthetic we were going for. Like at the beginning of the module, if you open it up, there's a horror host, like a TV host, like a Svengoolie or an Elvira or Joe Bob Briggs kind of character, like Grandpa Munster from the Munsters. But always like on Saturday nights he'd have like a TV show where he would, show these old movies from the 40s and 50s. So we had this horror host, Sam Hain, with this big top hat and kind of ghoulish teeth, and he gives the entire intro to the adventure. So it just came out really, really well, and we were able to throw all of our little Easter eggs into it to really make it pop. There's a big pumpkinish beholder kind of creature at the end called the Rot King, who literally plants its victims into the ground and draws sustenance off them. There's a headless horseman, but instead of having a head, he has literally this. You think when he throws it at you, like the old classic headless horseman bit, you think it's this head is going to be rolling towards you, but it turns out it's like this cool little beholder seeker head that rolls around and kind of rolls and shoots eye beams. So you got to fight the horseman, you got to fight this crazy head, you got to fight the horse, and all 3 different things, and it just makes for some really cool encounters. Oh, and John, he put this great haunted house in the middle of it. And we tried to ignore all the classic haunted house tropes, like ghosts and all this stuff. And there's none of that in there. So we try to make a very different haunted house because it has to be very condensed for that section. But he wrote that part and it was just brilliant. So he did some interesting things, and it was just a fun project to do. Really, really fun.
Awkward silence.
Well, I mean, when I saw Edwin at North Texas after I agreed to do it, I was trying to pitch him on like what my extra ideas were, and I was just blathering on and on and on. And at one point I looked over at Edwin and he had this like look at us, like a almost comical look on his face, like, when's this guy going to shut up?
No, okay. By the way, I want to thank. We got 2 new members that are paid members to the channel. Thank you very much, Dave. I'm going to screw up your last name, but hopefully you enjoy the screw up of this one. Mamarkand, Dave Mamarkand. If that's you, welcome. Thank you. And Gary Oliver is in the room. Mike, I told you.
He's checking on me, making sure I don't share any secrets or spill any beans. So, once again, Big Daddy Gary's watching over me. So
I love me some Gary. What a good dude.
Mm-hmm. Who doesn't?
That's right.
And we even talked about my favorite thing you ever wrote, occurrence at Howling Crater, which is if you like The Hills Had Eyes and you thought I'd like to make this into a D&D module, then that's pretty much what this is. And it's just a great. Everybody that I know has read it, loved it. It's just a. You entered it in the 3 Casts Award last year, and I think I told you this, but it scored very well with the judges. It did really well, and the judges actually complimented very favorably on it. And so
I don't care about
you barely lost out to Ben. You barely lost to Ben. I'll tell you that. It was that close.
I don't care about very many awards, but I love that con so much. It is actually the one award that I actually do care about.
If Ben Burns had a brain
go down, by the way. So
what's that?
If Ben Burns had a brain fart that year and forgot to submit something, you would have won. Let's put it that way, because it scored very well. The judges were very complimentary of it. So yeah, that's a great module. Anybody that wants to. That would be the one I would say buy if you were going to buy something. But what you're coming out with is you have it next week. You have a Kickstarter, and it's a revamp of Jungle Tomb of the Mummy Bride, except it's revamped for DCC.
It's Howling Crater.
DCC, yeah.
It's an occurrence at Howling Crater that I'm redoing.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
And it's for DCC.
No, that's my bad. Yeah.
It's for DCC and MCC. The first Howling Crater was, about 100 pages, and I think 31 or 32 pages of that was stats, because it's 5e, and there's just this giant block of stats in the back. But DCC stats are this big. They're like old first edition stats. This little usable,
awesome. Yeah.
much better in my opinion. Those early stat blogs. But so I was able to just take a lot of extra material that hadn't made it into the book and put it into this version, add an introductory adventure, add a town that you would actually start out in, and then just, more monsters, more magic, more NPCs, more encounters, more locations, just basically expand it, beef it up, and turn it from a medium size kind of like, manageable hex crawl into like a true like open source hex crawl where it's open world, player agency. You can go anywhere you want at any time. Sure, you have your prompts, but it's hey, here's your hex, go for it. And I think it works better that way when this adventure, at least, whenever the players have completely open agency, they can do whatever they want, and it's always going to be interesting. So yeah.
Well, hold on, Mr. Combs. I'm casual person here, and I don't play DCC. Why should I buy this DCC version of Occurrence at Howling Crater?
2 reasons. So the first one is if you like the first one, then this is just way more of that. Plus, I was able to go in and kind of like, I didn't really know what I was doing at this time, so I'm able to go in and kind of fix this. I've also added an oh crap, what do you call them? I'm having a brain fart. At the beginning where you read aloud text to the players. Every encounter has read aloud text now, so you can use it or you don't. It's up to you. Some players like it, some don't. I don't traditionally use it, but I put it in here because that's the DCC and MCC styles to have read aloud text. And the second is DCC is easily, any DM worth their salt that has ever played DCC knows how similar it is to the world's most popular role-playing games. So you can convert it over to those OSR, OSE, first edition, second edition pretty easy. So even if you already have it, you're getting almost double the amount of material. And then, it's all in much simpler. I'm not taking up all this space with all these crazy 5e stat blocks. Oh my God. And then so much more art. Like there's almost as much art that was in the first one that is in this one. So, and all the people who were in the first one came back to do more illustrations. So everything fits. It's not like a crazy hodgepodge of art.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Ed Bickford in there that he actually just delivered 2 pieces today that are astounding. You got Adrian Landeros, Jay Shields, Tim Burns. You got all these guys that worked on the first one that are just killers, and they came back to do more art for the book. So looks good.
By the way, James Shields he did the logo for North Texas Con last year. He's doing the logo for our 15th year this year too. Gary just talked to him the other day, so we're going to have another James Shield logo this year. So yes, James is awesome. James' stuff is great.
Yeah, well, he's not only a talented artist, but he is a super legit human being. He's a very, very good guy.
He's like he's really soft spoken.
So
he comes to the con every year with his dad, which is the coolest thing ever.
From Alaska.
His dad comes, from Alaska. So, and he's a great guy. And last year, and luckily James won't hear this, so I don't have to worry about embarrassing him. But last year it was very important to him to do the logo for the one he did, which was a tribute to Doug Ray, who passed away last year. And I thought he knocked out of the park. He did a great logo, and it was very personal. And the picture was a dragon that looks like Doug, and he just put everything in there that Doug liked. There's the initials of all his grandkids are on stuff. He's got a bunch of computer discs lying around. I mean, just every part of Doug's life was represented in that. And then he has the logo on there is Doug's favorite quote from the movies. And so it just, James just did a great job, and he lobbied for that. He said, I'm just going to do this because I'm really glad that Doug invited me to the con, and, and so he's just been a real asset to the con the last few years. James is a great.
Yeah, I've been working with him since my second Kickstarter. I've had stuff from him, and I think every book except my first. So everyone except the very first one I've done has had his art in it or some involvement from him. So, and I have no plans on that. So,
I always feel he's really underrated because nobody talks about him very much, but he's so good. I mean, his stuff is just it's not slick, but it's good. It's really good. Very, what is that? What are you showing us?
A little,
for the new continual light cover, right? That's going to be,
which is not out yet and probably won't be for Vic.
Yeah.
I still haven't, Mike, you've been a bad work spouse. I still haven't sent my corrections. But
God, you're so slow.
Hey,
you are slow.
Gents, I'm sorry, real quick. I'm having some computer issues. If you give me 1 second, let me go fix those.
Sure. Yeah, you're kind of zipping in and out a little bit. That maybe
while he goes and fixes his computer issues. TXG, Jay. GJ, it's all the same. No, it isn't. TXG, thank you for joining. We got 3 new members today.
Wow, that's nice.
Wow. I know. And of course, Gary and Dave, again, thank you. No, this is good. So,
the funny part. So, we had some amazing shows last summer when we would do a show about Mr. Lanasa, and we kind of moved away from that because honestly, it's boring at this point. It's just dumb, and so I think Eric and I beat that horse to death.
That being said, though, if I find some new like Dave Johnson like idiocy, which I may have, I'll be sure to bring it to light.
I don't know what else you can at this point. I don't know what else you can say, but we had some amazing ratings for some of those shows because everybody loves to watch a train wreck. Well, once we kind of moved away from that, our audience we dropped off a few people here and there because people love to come see train wrecks. I mean, it's just human nature. So we really appreciate everybody that shows up because
here's the thing, though, that we've certainly we're still gaining subscribers greatly. The Tenkar Tavern Substack, where you can follow on a weekly basis what's happening on this channel, what's happening on our sister channels, what's going to happen when Mike gets his own YouTube channel. We have well over 100 subscribers now. I never expected that great a response to it. We've added channels almost every week to that newsletter, to that website. So if you haven't subscribed, please do so. It's free. There's no charge. There's no spam. We send it out once a week. There's an opportunity where it might be twice a week if there's some stuff going on. Which, by the way, Joe the Lawyer, put Joe the Lawyer into YouTube, not on this tab, but open up another tab. Joe the Lawyer is going to be having a live stream tonight at 11 p.m. I will be on another live stream after this one. God help me, God. But, it's just a fun time. We enjoy doing this. That's why we do this. That's why Levi's here. That's why Mike's here. That's why I'm here. We enjoy sharing with the community. And I like to think this reminds me of sitting down at the end of ShireCon or sitting down in a hotel bar at North Texas and just bullshitting with my friends. And this way, you're not physically with us, but you can share in that experience. You can get the stories. You can get behind the scenes. You can hear us bitch about the Ennies, which we probably will do before the show is out.
But by the way, I want to tell another personal reminiscence about Levi, which is why he's just. Levi's just the coolest dude. I mean, I just see he's the kind of guy. He's the kind of guy you want to be your friend when you see him because he's just so cool. But Levi was one of the very small handful of people that actually came and enjoyed the 2020 North Texas. He flew in during the COVID, and that was the year we only have about 75 people because we told everybody from out of state, stay away, don't come if you're out of state. Levi said, screw it, jumped on a plane, and he flew to North Texas, and I'm glad he did. We had a great time there.
That was a really special con, actually. Really, really fun.
It was Doug's last con, so I'm glad that everybody that came. I'm sorry, not 2020. 2020. Yeah, it was. I'm glad everybody that came because unfortunately, Doug got sick before 2021. Wasn't able to make it. So unless you went to the very, very small 2020 con, which only had about 75 people, you didn't get to see Doug the last time. So that was great that you came, Levi. But yeah, that was cool. I'm glad you came that year.
I have a photo I need to send you. So at that con, my friend Casey, our friend Casey Christopherson, he couldn't make it. So I had a life-size cutout of his head made, like a photo.
That's right. Yes.
Yes. And then I went and played in Doug's game, and when we took a picture at the end of the game, he put it over his face. So there's a picture of Doug sitting there with.
No, I've never seen it. I don't think.
Yeah.
You definitely did get that. Definitely. Yeah. Yes. Gary and I would love to see that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's funny.
You came in. Yeah, you came in. And like I said, I was just really happy to see you that year because that was really cool that you were able to come in and we got to hang out the warehouse and talk and it was awesome. It was a
lot of cool games too. Like Ben Burns ran a really good Cthulhu game that I was in with John Lyle and several people. But Chris, his dad, super famous, wrote I'm having brain farts tonight.
Chris Holmes.
Yeah, Chris Holmes. He wrote D&D for God's sake.
Yeah, Chris Holmes came from out of town twe there was only like 3 or 4 people really that flew in from out of town. It was you and Chris Holmes and a couple other people. I just can't remember the name, but we were real happy because we had told everybody that year, look, we don't want to take responsibility for everybody coming to our con and get sick. So we told all the special guests to stay away. We told them now Diesel came because Diesel he lives in Austin. He drove up it and he wasn't going to not come. That's just Diesel. And so Diesel was there, but I don't think really we didn't have anybody else in. And then
just
we had a few people that
came
in from out of town.
Yeah. I think Edmund Games came.
Donahue came. Yeah. Yeah. But it was a fun con. We had a good time that year. I'm glad we had it that year because we were going to call it off and we thought no, let's just go ahead and do it.
That was a lot of fun.
I'm so glad we did it for Doug because that was Doug's last con. I'm so happy we did it for him because I would feel bad to this day if we hadn't had that con and it just sucked he couldn't make last year's con. It really did.
He was a really good game master. I wonder what it would have been like to play at his table. Because he had a real command of the rules and he could command the table. Yes. I think it would have been very interesting to be in his games.
So I used to, Doug and I had a long standing argument because Doug was a story gamer and I'm not a story gamer. I don't know. I like combat. I like combat. I like rolling the dice. I like to have everything. So when I get a game together, like we're playing this, we're wrapping up our Highfell campaign. We have like 3 or 4 more sessions. I've got everything written out. I've got all the monster stats. I got all this stuff. Doug just did everything. Everything was right up here. And he had like note cards. And he would just go with the flow. And it would drive me crazy. So like, well, how do you know this is gonna? Well, I just do whatever those guys think I should do. I do. No, that's called story gaming. That's not real gaming. But that's the way he played. He loved it. He loved that. But he was really good at it. He could really just go with the flow. And some of the plots he had one plot that I like so much that if I ever do a mega dungeon, this is going to be the one I'm going to do. I actually discussed it with Greg Gillespie. Greg thought it was a great idea too, and so I have that one filed away because I thought it was such a good idea. And he had some great ideas for adventures, and I really wish he'd written more of them down. But he was not a writer downer. He was just kept it all right up here.
He was more of a doer.
Yeah, he just would.
By the way, Gary.
And I said, well,
Gary corrects your attendance. It's 155 for 2020.
For 2020, are you sure, Gary?
That might include people who I'm going to guess people who might have paid and let the money go.
It just didn't seem like that much, but I mean, I Gary knows the numbers. So if Gary says 155, but I swear it wasn't that big. I swear it was half that, but who knows? I ran the game. I ran a game that year, but I ran it at the warehouse of all things. James was actually my game that year too, but yeah, I remember and I ran the auction at the warehouse too. Yeah. We had to run the auction, and we did have the midnight auction, which was severely curtailed because it was
I mean, your brother kept his pants on. Oh, jeez, what happened?
No, he didn't. No, he did not keep his pants on. His pants were off. No.
By the way, Gary is sure and says that was the badge that turned it out.
All right, I trust Gary then.
I don't think anybody double dipped, but hey, and
yeah, that was the first year that I met Lou Lou too, because he came I think on
that's right,
Friday or Saturday and stayed, and gosh man, that guy's so genuine and so nice. I've had a friendship with him ever since. I was really happy to meet him that year.
Is anybody more happy all the time than Lou Lou? I mean, the guy has.
I think he works at it. I think he works at being happy and productive.
Yeah,
and,
he's great.
Yeah, he always seems he's always upbeat. Whenever I have a conversation with that guy, I just leave it feeling happy and glad that I met him.
We're it's really great. The RPG industry, once you get away from the headlines and you just get the people, and you go to cons and you meet people that actually play and write games, and not the people that write about games or that don't care about games. God, it's really a great set of people, isn't it? I mean, the RPG industry is just awesome.
I liked him so much, and I like his book so much that earlier this year I asked him if he would be interested in writing an adventure for Planet X Games, and he did. In all the things that he's doing, he including that, he went and wrote another adventure for another company, and it's called Assault on Witchgate 13, and I'm here to tell you, man. It's a really, it fits my aesthetic perfectly, and it's really, really good. I gave him this basic framework, and I said, just run with it. And what he came back with is better than what I could have written. Like, it's so interesting and so, again, pulpy, and it's just not like other adventures. So I'm really excited to get that out sometime, probably mid next year. It'll probably be my last 5th edition module. So.
Whoa, your last 5th edition module. Talk to us, sir, because so I don't know if you've watched last few shows. We've been talking about D&D Next and the effect it's going to have on the industry. Blah, blah. So we're going to get you on the spot here.
That's okay.
So why your last 5th edition module? You think?
Well, I mean, we are coming to the end of the edition. It's it's the chum is in the water, the smell is in the air. I've had great success with 5th edition. I enjoy playing it. It's not my system of choice, but I do enjoy playing it when I get the opportunity. I play earlier, BX and first edition. I play OSE, I play DCC, things like that. Kind of a simpler rules adjacent game. But I have room for basically one more 5th edition project in my in all the things that are coming next year. And I thought, let's do this last edition, or this last adventure that Lu Alu is doing, and it'll be our last one, and then we'll see what 6th edition brings. But it's not looking great at this time. So unless there's some serious changes made, and I hope they do, but unless there's some serious changes made, I'm probably going to switch over to OSE, or just a kind of a blanket OSR system, like a first edition or BX kind of system, or something Castles and Crusades, something in that in that area. But the forerunner, because I enjoy playing it, is OSE, and then I'll do DCC modules. So OSE and DCC is what it's looking like after 5th edition goes away, unless D&D 1, they show some, there's some surprises that we just don't know.
Well, here's something that I listen, because of 1D&D, I've actually and certain lawsuits that are pending in the community. I've been reading Emerald again, and there's a big argument from people who are not publishers, by the way, but people who are D&D fans, D&D players, D&D DMs, that are like, oh, 5e is never going to go away. Oh, people can always write for 5e, even if 1D&D is not open to the open game license, like 5e wasn't for 15 months. It won't make a difference because 1D&D is going to be backwards compatible to 5e. And when you talk to publishers are like, people want to play the current system. And if it's not in print, even if it's going to be backwards compatible, just like, listen, first edition was backwards compatible to 2nd edition. You could play it without much of a problem. Everybody wanted the new shit. Nobody wanted, if there were third-party publishers back then, nobody would have been publishing for 1E, because 2E would have been the new thing. And if you can't publish for the new game, publishing for the old, saying, well, you can still use it with it, it doesn't seem to cut it. I'm not much of a publisher. I would never consider myself to be in that category, but I can understand the logistics behind it. And I can understand why most publishers are hedging their bets, because if there isn't a way to publish for 1D&D out of the box, you're not going to close up shop, and you're not going to write for 5e because that market's going to shrink. You've got to find a new market. Now, we are generally, if you're watching this stream, you are likely have some interest in old school gaming. I'm wondering if the change in editions is going to be something that is going to give a little extra life to old school gaming, because there are publishers that put their feet in multiple pools who've already pulled out of the Pathfinder pool. I don't see too many people writing third-party material for Pathfinder 2. That seemed to have, people got nervous at that stuff. I'm wondering with 1D&D, are we going to see, even with an OGL, are we going to see less people playing in that pool because there's going to be a schism in that D&D market again?
Well, you made a good point too, because look, OSC is really easy to write for, and it's a. I just got this week. I came back home from South Padre, and I got my OSC Kickstarter kit, and I bought everything the last Kickstarter. I mean, I got the box set, all the books, everything. And let me tell you, it's a beautiful system. It's beautifully put together. But you read the stuff, it's easy to write for. And so it's not even like in the old days when everybody had to do Pathfinder, and you had to have a special guy on staff at Frogger Games that did all our Pathfinder stuff or changed everything over because it was so hard. I could do an OSE module in my sleep. I mean, it's that easy to do. And so if it's easier to write for and it's old school, I think you're going to see a lot of people gravitating towards that like to do old school anyway. People like Levi or people that love old school anyway. It's easy to do OSE.
Yeah, so it's not just OSE; it's DCC too. At least for me, I enjoy both those games a lot, and just that creatively, I want to write for things that I enjoy. I will most definitely give one D&D a shot. I'll give it a try. I'll probably buy the first core books, and I'll definitely check it out. I mean, I don't owe D&D anything as far as like the new versions of it, but I certainly owe I mean, we stand on the shoulders of giants, like, I mean, I wouldn't have a publishing company if it weren't for D&D. So I feel like, I should check it out just to see and run some games, play some games. But as it stands, like, it's not looking great. So, I play OSE, I play DCC, and I'll probably write for those systems, the ones that I enjoy. And they have very good following. OSE, they use Gavin and his whole company. They use the same warehouse that I do. So I'll go to pick up books, or like when my books are shipping, to do like just a check, and I'll see them shipping OSE stuff, and it's mountains of books. And I'm not even exaggerating. When they were shipping out those box sets, I stopped by there, and there was like 7 people behind these individual little tables. And it was like little fortresses of OSE box sets and OSE books. I mean, thousands and thousands of them. So somebody is buying those. And if they're enjoying it half as much as I enjoy it, then, then there's definitely a massive future for OSE. DCC has the best community of any game system that I've ever run across. It's the
incredible community. Yes.
They're the least divisive. They're the least likely to turn on each other and argue about semantics. And they really turn, if you're a passionate DCC fan and a publisher, they really turn out for your stuff. They're extremely loyal to each other, and it's the smallest, biggest community out there. Okay. Like, you can talk to people that you've never met and say, hey, I've got a question. I know we don't know each other, but we have this mutual friend, and there's nobody's being a jerk about anything. It's just a really good community. Not saying that other communities aren't great too, but for my money, so far, DCC has the best community that I've run across.
Yeah, they're
extremely loyal.
They're like you said, it's really, really a loyal community, and that's what really like the OSC. Their last Kickstarter, or their Kickstarter box set, was $750,000, and that's good for an old school niche game. Yeah. OSC, that $750,000 is pretty good. And the thing about DCC is their fans are loyal. They buy everything they put out. And the thing goes for MCC stuff too now. Mm-hmm. They will buy everything that comes out. And that's great when you have, I know Troll Lord Games is a bit like that too with Castles and Crusades. Whatever they put out, they have a certain amount of people that will buy no matter what it is, they'll buy it. And you've got to have that to have a niche be a niche publisher. You've got to have that really hardcore group that buys everything he does. Frog God has the same thing. I know we do. So that's always good for Frog God too. Although right now we're going through a little bit of a change where we're putting out some 5e stuff, some Cast of Crusade stuff, some OSR stuff, some OSE stuff. We're kind of floating around a little bit. We're also waiting to see what's going to happen with one D&D next, new D&D, whatever you want to call it. And so, but the people who do OSE and the people who do DC, I mean, that's what has to drive these little niche communities, the fact that the audience is so loyal and will buy anything they put out.
Well, just very friendly too, extremely friendly.
When you say we'll buy anything, say what you will about the amount of stuff that Goodman Games puts out. I don't think I've ever read a DCC adventure that wasn't at the very least good, not average. Good, if not better. And I don't run DCC. I've run DCC, but I would take their adventures and run them in Swords and Wizardry, and just convert it on the fly. Because you can always take a system that's more complicated and spin it down. I think the DCC adventures are the best episodic adventures out there, which don't build upon each other. You play them, and then you tell your party, well, you took over the last 3 weeks of carousing. Here's your next adventure.
Right.
I think they work perfectly for that. And I think they understand what it is to be a hero beyond the abilities that's on your character sheet. Because most of their adventures, if your players don't play it smart, you're going to be losing PCs. Honestly, you have to play it smart. They assume that you will. Whereas with 5e assumes that you will survive unless you really, really, really play.
Unless you try to commit suicide, even then, there's a good chance you're not going to die because it's very.
But
it's very, very
DCC
hard
starts
to get killed.
with they start with the funnel where you have the 4 characters, and you're lucky if one of them survives, and that that you can take them to the first level. There's no mercy in those DCC funnels. Matt Gullett taught me that the first time that he ran me through a DCC funnel. He killed 3 out of the 4 of my characters, and I think he only let one of my last character just live just out of pity. So,
Well,
oh boy, pity for the long gun guys. That's bad. That's bad.
You don't want to inherit like a character from somebody else's funnel of 4. It's like,
No.
oh well, I had 3, so here I'll give you my worst. I'll give you. Listen, his high stats is 7, but you'll enjoy him. Don't worry about it, okay? By the way, we have a new listener, Bud Wright. Hi, Eric. Bud from MeWe. Longtime listener, finally subscribed. Levi, loves City of Brass, and just ordered Jungle Tunes for DCC. 100% agree regarding the DCC community. I play more and more DCC as time goes by.
I forgot that you did work in the City of Brass too, Levi. That was your buddy Casey's baby. And so I guess he let you play in the sandbox too, huh?
Well, I was thanking because it's my first non-Planet X work, and I would say thank you for letting me wet my beak because he gave me a little bit of basically Casey showed me how to write an adventure. You always hear like Neil Gaiman will say Alan Moore showed me how to write a comic book script. Well, Casey showed me how to plot out an adventure. Stay away from this, do this. Here's a very rough template for it. And just cut loose. And then he helped me heavily edit all the mistakes out of my first one. So, shout out to Casey.
Somebody mentions,
you guys.
Gary Bay. Sorry,
I saw
Gary Bay in the comments.
When I see Garaby's name, my brain shuts off. I have a seizure, and then I get back to normal. So try not to mention Garibay in the comments, people. It's just that's scary. So I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Levi.
Well, I was just saying, we mentioned Castles and Crusades a minute ago, and I've always liked Castles and Crusades. They're Arkansas boys, like I am. But man, this last couple of years, they have just shot through the stratosphere of the way their books look. Their books look incredible now. I'm not saying they ever look bad because they didn't. They look great. But now, it's just a whole new level of awesomeness with those books. The covers of some of those, they blow me away. I bought my 3 core Castles and Crusades book simply because they had really cool covers. I just I can't help but just heap praise on those guys because they've always been very supportive and very nice to me. And they're good
dudes. The Chenaults are really good dudes. They are, and I mean, they look. If nothing else, I always give them credit for saving Memorial 2, which was never going to come out until they jumped in and did the heavy lifting on that. So they're true fans of the community. They're really good dudes.
I played my first game of Castles and Crusades years and years ago at a little tiny con in Tulsa, Oklahoma called Conestoga. It was the only con that we, you know that one? Yeah. So I remember I played in Davis's game. It was a great little 3-4 hour game. But I always remember because the special guest of the con, this tiny little con in Tulsa, was George R.R. Martin. And then of course, years later he would go on to be
in the world,
super famous. Yeah. So, but back then he was.
I wish they did more Troll Lord. They need to do more Troll Lord cards. I know for a while they gave it up because they weren't. Well, first of all, they were scheduling cons places like Muskogee, Oklahoma, which nobody's going to go to. So they said, "Oh, well, we just can't do cons." I'm like, "Yeah, you can. Just do them in Little Rock or do them somewhere around a big city." I really think that Troll Lord could do a really good con every year if they wanted to.
I would love to see him at North Texas, just to come down and hang out and run some games for the fans.
Times. Just haven't seen him I don't think they've ever come to the new venue. We saw him a few times at in the Marriott. Steve came a few years. I know they set up about 3 or 4 years, but just haven't seen him in the last few years.
I like all those guys. They're very nice, and they have a great game system. So I wish they would really come to cons, because I would like to play those games with the people who wrote them. You know.
Fair enough.
So if you're listening, Chenaults, please come to North Texas.
Please, Chenault. They're welcome whenever they want to come back. Like I said, we just haven't seen them in a few years, and they used to, like I said, they used to come and set up a whole booth, and they had everything all ready to roll. We had the Goodman people came by quite a bit back in the old days too.
Yeah.
We had Harley Stroh, we had Joe, we had quite a few Goodman games. I did talk to Doug Kovacs this year. He used to come a lot, and he hasn't come the last couple of years. And he actually contacted me at Gamehole and said, "Hey, when are you going to have me back in North Texas?" I'm like, "You're welcome whenever you want to come. I just haven't heard from you in like 2 or 3 years." And so we had a long talk, and he talked about how much he loved Doug. And Doug was really – I did not – see, there's a lot of things – Doug was a very private person, but apparently Doug talked to a lot of people that I never knew he talked to. But apparently he and Doug Kovacs used to talk all the time. I was like, really?
That's awesome.
It just and he said, "Oh yeah." And so I said, "Well, if you want to come, you're welcome to." So he said he's going to try to make it this year, but as of right now, we don't have any yes or no on him. But hopefully we'll get Doug back. And Doug always runs a really, really good DCC game. So
if you've ever been in a Doug Kovacs game, it's like taking acid before you roll the dice. Like it's insane.
Literally.
And hey, on another note, like. You're talking about how Doug used to correspond. That would make the greatest ever 80s sitcom, where Doug Ray and Doug Kovacs were in an apartment together. Can you imagine?
Oh my God! Well, first of all, you can barely understand anything Doug Kovacs says because his accent is so thick, and then Doug Ray, half the time you couldn't understand what he was saying because it was so technical. So yeah, that would be the craziest sitcom of all time.
Two Dougs. There we go.
Here's Doug, and here's the other Doug.
I was always surprised. Well, Doug had I remember talking to Jeff Grubb last year, and we had Jeff Grubb came to a couple cons. He hasn't been able to come back, and I'm going to try to get him to come next year. We'll see. But he used to talk to Doug all the time too. I'm like, because he told me, he goes, "Oh yeah, I miss talking to Doug." I'm like, "Did he just call you up?" Or he goes, "Oh yeah, we were talking. I talked it up. Call this." I'm like, because Jeff's been a judge of the Three Casts Award about the last 4 or 5 years. So I guess Doug had to talk to him every year about Three Casts, but it just doesn't seem like the kind of guy. Doug would talk to anybody, and Doug was fearless. He's the one that cold called Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman got him to come to our con one year look, I know you guys don't come to little cons, but what can we do to get you here? And there was like, well, because he said we had Elmore that year. He goes, well, I got Elmore to come. Well, they love Elmore. They love Larry. And they said, oh, well, you just can't announce we were coming because our attendance fee is like $3,000. And he said, but we will waive that fee if you don't announce we're coming. And okay, so we didn't announce they were coming that year. Everybody that came in blew their mind because there was Margaret Weiss
awesome.
And Tracy Hickman. But I mean, I would have never had the guts to cold call them. I'm like, they're not going to come to our little tiny con. But Doug would call. He called everybody. He called some people. I just to this day I'm just shocked. And he called. I remember he used to call Monty Cook every year. And Monty was real nice to him. Like, it's just a small con, Doug. I really can't, make it. He's like, well, look, we'll make it worth your while. What can we do? This thing, I just can't make it. But I appreciate you asking me. I mean, Monty was real nice to him all the time.
Right.
But he's just like, I'm just probably not going to come there. But he would get these people to come that you would never suspect would ever want to come. And it was like I said, I'm always shocked to this day to hear the people that told me, oh yeah, I used to talk to Doug all the time on the phone. I'm like, about what? Because it doesn't seem like they're very compatible people. But
no, there's some really great personalities that come to North Texas. I mean, Errol Otis, Larry Elmore, Darlene, and then like Doug Kovacs. Like, you'll never meet another person that is like Doug Kovacs. He is an American original. He is 100%. There's nobody else on the planet like. He's like Stefan. Like, there's nobody like him.
Oh, Stefan's great. We love.
He's the only one.
Awesome.
That's like him. And when you meet him and you spend time with him, you're like, oh yeah, this is the guy. Like, there's nobody else like him. So I just love coming to that con.
Well, watch the Dwarven now. There's a documentary about Stefan Bourcon.
Oh
called
yeah,
The Dwarven
I've
Knot.
watched it.
Watch that, and that is him, and he's going to be a special guest this year. Don't tell Gary I told you.
It's awesome.
He said he's going to come this year, so yeah, he loves to come to North Texas. He loves North Texas. Loves
Stefan,
the people there.
bring your
just loves
boombox.
hanging out.
You know,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, and well, last year, see, what was great about last year was he always brings his boombox, and a lot of cons look askance at that because they don't like him going downstairs to the main party room with the boombox. The last year, the Westin gave him his own party room off the dining room, and so we were in there with the radio cranked, and it was great. We finally Stefan got to just. And here's the funny thing: so with Stefan, he has this boombox. He comes to the con. It's like it's always 70s metal. It's like Black Sabbath, Zeppelin.
Right.
It's hard stuff.
Yeah.
So we're listening. Then a Billy Joel song comes on.
Johnny Cash. Remember Johnny?
What?
Like,
Yeah, and then a Johnny Cash song comes on. I'm like, he says, "Oh," and the whole thing is, I guess we just never got deep enough into Stefan's playlist and these other cons. But he had some like. Then America comes on. I'm like, Horse with No Name. I'm like, what the hell? He's like, oh, I love 70s music. And I'm like, okay.
well, you know what I think it is, Mike? I think that at a regular convention, he has to play the music he knows is going to drive the convention nuts.
Right.
And here, the convention's like, play what you want, do what you want. It's like, oh, I don't have to drive them nuts. I can now do what I can play. I can play, more low key music, I guess you could say.
Well, Stefan's an American original too. He's the kind of
very
guy
much so.
You're not gonna, and he's an absolute genuine guy. I mean, there's some guys in the industry that they are exactly what they are. I mean, there's no pretense about them. And Doug Kovacs is that, and then Stefan's that too. Is that there's no pretense.
There's a lot of folks who come to your con that are very strong original personalities, and man, I would have it no other way because. When you meet these folks and there really are these larger than life characters, it's awesome. It's really awesome when people you admire live up to your admiration. So
right,
don't change a thing. none of you.
Yeah, that's kind of because we've all probably had the stories we can't tell where we've been let down by somebody we thought was really cool. That's in the industry. And if you're hanging around as much as people like us do, you're going to have those stories that you tell behind closed doors after a couple of beers, late night, Saturday night. But for the most part, most people in the RPG industry are pretty genuine, and they're pretty much exactly what you think they would be. And like I was never so happy to find out people like Zeb Cook, who I just always admired, and
the coolest
and Steve Winter, because they wrote second edition, which is my favorite edition of the game, and I would have been just busted if I'd known they were just assholes, and they weren't. They're absolutely the coolest dudes. And then Alan Hammock is another guy. I love the guy. He's just,
if you tell me that you don't like Alan Hammock, I think there's probably something wrong with you. I mean, there's not a more likable person on the planet.
Well, I think what's great about Alan is he knows there's something to be said for people in our industry that know their place in the industry. And by that, here's what I mean: is that look. They got lucky. They worked for TSR 3 or 4 years. They wrote an adventure that maybe is not the best one, but it became iconic. Like Alan wrote, Ghost Tower Inverness. He wrote a couple others too, but he wrote Ghost Tower. And he knows what he realizes his place in the cosmos. Look, I'm not any great RPG designer. I worked for TSR during their heyday. I wrote a really iconic module. That's what I did. And he doesn't put on airs, and we've all met that guy from that puts on airs because I wrote this, and like, okay, whatever. Look, you got lucky. TR at the time, you could have published, a module called my poop, and they would have sold 8 million copies. At the time, anything TSR put out was selling 8 million copies. And so Alan's one of those guys that realizes that. Look, I just got lucky, and I'm just happy people still remember me. And yes, he's a great guy. But most of the guys
and a fellow Guinness drinker.
Yes. Oh, I can't drink Guinness anymore, so I'm sorry. Yeah. So Mike is saying Alan isn't a lunatic like Tim Cass. So let me tell you about so Tim. What you see? Okay, you see Tim. So Tim is, and I'm going to say this in a way it doesn't sound nice, but it actually is nice. Tim is one of those people who is not genuine in that what you see at a convention is not what Tim is. And the reason is because I have met Tim many times outside of gaming. He's the nicest guy. He came over to the warehouse a few times with his grandkids. Just the most nicest guy. He is a persona at conventions, and that persona is, I'm going to be the growly old, the original D&D guy. You're all dead because I rolled a 6, you know. And I'm telling you, that is a persona he puts on for cons. He's actually the nicest guy behind closed doors. If you meet him, you know, not D&D wise. Yes, he's old and grouchy, but he's a totally different person when you meet him. And but I mean, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's not bad. It's just that's what he is. I mean, he's a it's like he tries to live up to the name. He's a curmudgeon in the dungeon. That's me.
I mean, I've spoken with Tim away from conventions back in the days of keeping a close eye on the Gygax Memorial Fund, right? Remember those days?
Mm-hmm.
And Tim was the nicest person to deal with. Spoke his mind. That doesn't change whether you're talking about a convention or in person. But it was on a personal level, he is a very good, loyal individual, and he's a very, I hate to say sweet person, and I want to ruin his image, but he's a sweet person behind the scenes. But you see him at a convention running a game. He's got a personality when he's running it. When he's away from the game and you're talking to him one-on-one at a convention, he's not as gruff as he was seeming when he was running the game.
No, you're 100% accurate. Yeah,
he does a charity for special needs kids where he brings them fishing. I don't know if he does it anymore because he's gotten a lot older and he has some physical problems. But he did that for many years, and I don't know that he bragged about it or even talked about it. I know he did it because I just know, because I know that he would auction stuff off every year at Gen Con to help pay for that. And so I mean, you know, he does a lot of work behind the scenes. Charity type work. So.
You know, I was always kind of intimidated by it because I heard all these stories, and you know, some folks in my circle, you know, who are all friends with him, you know, were just like, you know, you'd hear these stories from him. But then we were at Game Hole, and he was just kind of hanging out at our table with Jim and Jeff and a few other people, and these little girls came up with their mother, and they were looking at the dice, and Tim was so kind and just genial and gentle, talking to this mother and her 2 daughters. And I saw a whole different side. I was like, oh, this guy's, you're right. He's an act. Like, you know, he's playing the mean old gruff guy, but there's a sweet old teddy bear in there somewhere. I may never see that teddy bear, but
my wife's got a big,
too. You know,
my wife's not a big fan.
Sorry.
My wife's not a big fan because apparently he was gruff to her one time, and she held that against him. She's like, he's so mean. I go, he's not really mean. He was just gruff the one time you walked up to him and said hi or something. So she's not a big Tim Cass fan. She caught him on the wrong day. She caught him on the day he wasn't too friendly. But I guess the theme that we're talking about here, we just kind of got off on the subject, but is that most of these RPG guys are really nice. If you get a chance to go to a con and meet these guys, definitely do it. Because as Eric and I, we talk about this all the time. These guys are not going to be around forever. And Tim Cass, case in point, he was at his last North Texas last year. The reason is he can't travel anymore. He can't travel. He doesn't want to fly anymore. He'll probably still go to Game Hall because I know him and Jim Wampler drive there. But he's probably not going to. He told us he's not going to be able to come to North Texas anymore because of physical issues, and he's not going to fly anymore. And so, I mean, you know, the time that we have to meet these creators of the game is getting smaller and smaller. I mean, Alan Hammock has had a lot of medical issues the last few years. Matter of fact, I just need to talk to him. He went to the hospital in November, and I haven't heard back from him. I'll have to see what he's up to. But yeah, a lot of these guys are, you know, they have issues now. They're older and they're not going to travel anymore pretty soon. Which is why we have people like Levi now, because he's young and he's, you know, look at this guy. Look how healthy he looks. He's healthy as a horse. So he's going to. Well, yeah.
Don't wait to go to conventions for when it becomes a point where I become a special guest, because you've already been seeing me on a blog for a dozen years, on like podcasts for 5, on this channel for 2. You already fucking know me. You don't need to know me anymore, okay? You got to meet the people that there's a limited time to actually meet. All right? I mean, I love going to conventions to meet people. I love sitting down with Alan in the bar and just too much shit, and hearing stories from the TSR days, stories that you never hear Mike and I talk about in public or put on here because it's not for us to do, but it's fucking hilarious and or eye-opening as to the activities and frolicking that might have happened in the old TSR days. You can get that. Yeah. Mike knows what I'm talking about now. Oh yeah.
One of the best cons ever was either the second or third NTRPG con. We had Rob Coots used to come. Coots when he was in the United States used to come to all our cons, and Rob is a bit of an iconoclast. He does not get along with other TSR people or really anybody in the game industry because he walks his own path, right? I remember one night he treated Doug and I to a 4-hour monologue about everybody the TSR that was a shithead. And he told us why too. And there's some stories that have never been told that we've never told on that because it was eye opening. Now, and with Rob, you're not exactly 100% sure what you heard was exactly 100% the truth. But I think a lot. I've confirmed some of the stories over the years. I've confirmed some of the stories, and he was right more than he wasn't. So we learned some eye opening facts during those rants. But yeah, that's why you go to cons so you can hear these eye-opening rants from the people in the industry that tell you some inside scoops. You know, they're like, "Whoa, okay, didn't know that." So I have some stories. I'll tell you around the table. I will not tell on the air ever. But
that's why you're going to be in person.
I'll tell you some stories.
No recording devices are allowed, by the way, just so you know. Levi, though, you have a question, Levi.
Oh my.
TXG wants to know what is the hardest part of writing an adventure?
Well, I don't know about the hardest part, but I know what parts I like and what parts I don't like. I enjoy writing everything in the adventure, but I'm not a big fan of writing up stats, which is kind of a reversal of my early days because I used to really enjoy creating monsters that were really stat driven rather than like lore driven. But I enjoy writing adventure almost from beginning to end. But when it comes down to writing those long stat blocks, or going back in and, you know, oh, hey, I've got a trap here. I need to know, you know, it's 3.5. I got to figure out like what's the stat block on the trap look like, you know, like that stuff's just death to me, like boring. You know, it's not that I can't do it. It's not that I can't create that kind of stuff because I can. It's just it's my least favorite part. You know, but I don't know, best worst. I don't know. It really comes down to I think stats and rules. You know, because I don't know, like when that's some of the stuff I put in very last. You know, and sometimes like the rules of a game will dictate how I might change a trap because of the rules of the game, or change a monster's tactics because, you know, maybe it has, like in 5th edition, maybe it has lair actions, or there's certain abilities that work well with other monsters, you know, and then they can play off each other. That those abilities weren't in play in earlier editions, or, you know, in different games. But again, stats, I think stats and rules are just my least favorite part to do.
Ian blames that on 5e for you.
Yeah, again, you know, it's not that I hate 5e. Obviously, I've made 5 adventures for 5e, but I really enjoy the simpler rule systems over those long, complex stat blocks. And oh, hey, I'm a ranger or a monk, and now I have 15 actions this round, and I'm going to drink a potion. I'm going to catch an arrow. I'm going to attack 4 times. I'm going to move 10 feet. Now I'm going to move 30 feet. I'm going to catch another arrow. And I'm going to read a scroll, you know, but that's all. That's what I'm going to do this round. You know, good Lord, like.
Okay. Well,
I hate 5e, but
you got a follow-up question.
Good?
This time from L.
Okay.
Do you think the complexity of modern games due to mechanics bloat as opposed to old
okay?
simple games?
You all right?
Do you hear it? Can you hear us?
Oh, what happened?
Well, are we losing Levi?
Here we go.
Oh, I think something happened to Levi. There we go. He's back.
All right.
I think he's back. Oh,
Are you back? All right.
Man, you guys are cutting out really, really bad. I don't know if it's my.
I think it's you, Levi, because I'm fine. I can hear Eric fine, but you're cutting out real bad for me too.
Oh, I think he looks a little choppy, but his audio sounds fine.
He's very choppy. He's very.
Oh no!
choppy.
Now he just blinked off screen and did like a Star Trek. Whoop, he's going to be transporting. Now he's back. All right. Well,
All right. So, do you see the question there, Levi? You think the complexity of modern games due to mechanics bloat, as opposed to older, simpler games, causes the boredom to making stats due to being confining? Interesting.
I wouldn't say confining. I understand 5e stats. I understand. Going back through all the editions. I probably understand 4th the least, but I can build a character, I can build monsters, but I wouldn't call it confining. I just I really prefer those earlier versions. It's faster, it's sleeker, it's more, it's just less that you have to do. You can really turn. It's easier on the fly too. I don't have to figure out this chart versus I don't have to go through a stat block that's this big and read the whole thing when I've got a stat block that's a eighth of a size. So and I'm sure familiarity plays a role in that too, but I wouldn't call it confining. Yeah, that's a really good question.
Our readers, our viewers often have that. And they often don't have such great questions. Sometimes they just like to complain.
Well, so while you're not choppy, let's talk a little bit about you have your Kickstarter. When is your Kickstarter coming out, and when we should look for it next week?
Yeah, it's next Tuesday, December 13th. It'll launch probably like 9:00 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. But yeah, everything's ready to go. Again, twice as much art as the first one, tons of new material. And here's another thing, like I really think is interesting, and I honestly like to see more writers do it. But I'm able to I'm as a guy who has like several projects. I'm at 15 now, I think, but I can go back to my second project ever, and I can like revitalize it. I can fix the mistakes that that as a creator that I look at it and go, oh man, I wish I'd have done that differently. Well, now I can do it differently. And then I can add in all these bells and whistles and then take all the experiences, the dozens of games that I've had running that since at cons and at home and for friends. And I can take those experiences and go back to that original module, make it better, make it tighter, make it run faster and better and easier for judges.
So basically, you turn into the bionic module. I like that.
Yeah, it's the bionic module. Nice.
Come on, run faster, leap stronger mod. You're adding everything except for Lee Majors.
Yes, except for that bionic Bigfoot.
Yeah, add Lindsay. Well, you need to add Lindsay Wagner to that.
Well, yeah, it's like, we can double our fun. We can add a bionic woman into this matter, and then it all went downhill. Oh my god,
that was my 70s crush, Lindsay Wagner. Let me tell you, I was in front of that TV every night that came on.
For me, it was Linda Carter. I'm sorry,
Linda Carter too. Well,
yeah,
I mean that goes without saying. That and Charlie's Angels goes without saying. Come on now, I just
Yeah, Charlie's Angels didn't quite. I found those storylines too silly. How's that for?
Who you mean? Oh, you had the sound on. Okay, that's weird. Because I watched Charlie's Angels with the sound off, and
see, that's the secret. I didn't realize that. I'm sorry. I was.
Yeah.
You also watched it with one hand.
I was meant to be watched the sound off. No, I'm sorry.
I think this is the longest. I think it's the longest I've gone through any live stream or video where I haven't dropped an F-bomb yet. But Mike, you're really getting me close to it.
Well, I finished off my bottle of Buffalo Trace tonight, so I'm a little loopy. I'm not gonna.
It's okay.
I'm at home. I'm in my kitchen. See, I'm in the kitchen finally.
Right. And, all right. No driving involved.
No driving involved. So I'm okay. I don't even have to drive back from the warehouse. I'm here at home, so I can stumble over to the couch over here and sleep after this. Have dreams of Levi dancing in my head, and it'll be great.
You mispronounced Robert Bottolato. He's the only dancer in this circle.
And thank God for it.
Chippendales.
Yeah,
No.
what sucks is that so he's starting to work out routines now, and I'm like, no, you don't get to do routines. You're just eye candy. You appear you show your speedo, then you leave. I don't want, because like, I got a great idea for a routine next year. I'm like, no, you don't get routines. I'm the star. I wear the devil horns here, so you just get to pop on and make everybody laugh, and then you're out of there. So it's terrible when the hired help thinks that they can start dictating terms. So
By the way, Jason Gardner wants to know DCC or
Oh, boy.
MCC. Which do you
Rocky.
prefer?
So just the same way that I prefer D&D over Gamma World, I would prefer DCC over MCC, but I enjoy it all. Obviously, my next adventure is a DCC and MCC module. So I'm still trying to get into one of Jim Wampler's games, because he runs games at 9 a.m. in the morning at cons, and I run games at 9 a.m. in the morning at cons, which I learned from watching him. And how, because you get people that's their first game of the day, they're still fresh, they're enthusiastic,
nice,
and you're not tired, so you can give them your best. So that's why I run so early. And the people who also are, they're very unlikely to drop their first game, to go off and do whatever. So you usually have a full table, so you get maximum spread, and you can really get some good games. So.
Well,
sadly, I don't think Jim's going to be able to show up this year. I've talked to him, and he's got some other issues this year, which kind of sucks. But
that's a bummer.
I love having Jim. Jim runs some great games.
We've been together. Rocky and Ian and Jeff and Skeeter, and I. We all. Jim, we all been together for the Independent Publishers Union, and it's always good to have those guys around. I love all five of those dudes. They're all just gems of human beings. All of them individually in different ways have been very helpful to me, and I admire all of them, different qualities in each of them as humans and as creators in general. So having Jim not at North Texas will be, that's unfortunate. I like seeing that guy.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, he's one of those guys that's always really happy to come to, and he puts on some really good games, which is
he loves games. It's clear when you talk to him, and when you deal with him that he's not just a guy who's in it to do whatever. He loves games. He loves games and loves gaming. He's just he's a nice dude.
Oh, hey, there's something I wanted to bring up. I forgot about. You write a publication called The Phylactery.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. It's really cool. I'm pretty sure I have every issue. I'm not 100. No, I'm positive I have every issue. Tell us a little bit about the Phylactery.
So the Phylactery is an OSR zine. It's the only OSR. There's no other conversions for it. And it was just born out of my love for the OSR, but also a need to create material strictly for the OSR. And when I say OSR, I mean kind of that first edition sort of area. So if you look at it, all the stats and statistics come straight out of first edition AD&D, which I think is kind of a sweet spot for a lot of people, because it's not as basic as BX, but it's not as complicated as it gets later on. It's just if you read 5e stats, you can adjust it up or down. So it's a nice sweet spot that you can do conversions on the fly for. The Phylactery is just full of stuff that I want to see in games, whether it's NPCs or magic, relics and artifacts, interesting tables. Because in general, I'm not a fan of a lot of tables in magazines, in publications, because a lot of times it's the same table over and over and over again. And how many wandering monster charts can you read? How many attitude or reaction charts can you read? If I get a chart, I want it to be interesting. I want it to give me something that I haven't seen before, and that's what I try to do with charts in the Phylactery. I put locations, hex crawls, mini dungeons, mini adventures. Every issue has 4 all new monsters in the OSR style in the back. There's on the very back page, there is a recurring it's not so much a cartoon as it's like the old Ripley's Believe It or Not, but it's called Save versus Disbelief. So instead of Ripley's Believe It or Not, you get Save versus Disbelief. That's always very interesting and ties into other Planet X projects and, you know, cool little Easter eggs and whatnot. But it's just full of stuff that I would like to see him play. There's 4 issues so far. 3 of them have gone out to the public. The 4th one is at the printer right now at Art Advertising in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And the hardback, the Phylactery Omnibus, which is the first 4 issues, plus about 50 extra pages of all new material, is at Mix'em. And I've had some difficulty with them.
Really?
They sent me a bad proof, and I've gone back and forth with them until I got a good proof. And then by that time, unfortunately, you know, we were into December, so now it's going to be the first week of January before I get my books, which would be, you know, put me about 3 weeks late to my backers. So, but you know, I've been upfront and honest about it from the beginning. It's just, man, Mix'em said December 18th. I started just said December 8th. And then they came back and said, "Oh, we have manpower shortages. It's going to be January 8th." So I don't know how a whole month got shoved in there somewhere, but it is what it is. So, but yeah. So Phylactery, and to wrap it up, is just it's the stuff that I want to see in the OSR. It's a book that you can open up and you can just take what you need from it and ditch the rest. It's like those old Arduin books that had. You know, you'd open up Arduin,
yes.
You know, Welcome to Skull Tower, and there would be, you know, 50 different subjects going on with inside. There'd be monsters, locations, NPCs. Oh, hey, here's 4 pages of an adventure that doesn't really go anywhere, but yeah, hey, work with it, figure it out. Here's a table about prismatic walls. Here's a table about hell spirals, and you know, it was all over the place. And I love Arduins so much, and the flavor of those books.
We're huge Arduin fans.
Yeah,
and we had the Arduin guys on. They're great. The Arduin guys are great. The guys that had the legacy of the Arduin, they've been on the show.
Yeah,
before.
Emperor's Choice,
guys
David George.
Oh yeah,
They've been
yeah.
in the live chat. Both of them. You know,
yeah, but like the old Dragon Tree Press stuff too, I was a big fan of that. So yeah, the Phylactery is just a natural extension of my love for those things in the OSR.
So talking about your love of Grindhouse, give me some of your favorite 70s Grindhouse type movies, and we'll see, because you know, so Glenn and I, we drive Eric crazy because whenever Glenn Hallstrom and I get together, we're movie, and Eric's just sitting there staring at the ceiling, twiddling his thumbs. But so maybe give me your Grindhouse stuff. Maybe I've seen the same things you have. We could talk about some good pulp stuff there.
I don't know if this is I don't know how deep you wanted to get into the subject, man, because we can go super deep. So I'll keep it pretty.
I like to get really deep. I like to go deep.
All right. So what is it like? When I say Grindhouse, what does that mean? It essentially means low budget, low cost, non-studio movies from the late 60s on through about 1985. And when I say non-studio, I mean like they weren't like MGM or, you know, TriStar, or, you know, these big.
We would now call it independent, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of times, you know, guys started out in the Grindhouse aesthetic, like, you know, Joe Dante or John Carpenter or Tobe Hooper, or, you know, these guys who went on to these massive careers later on. They started out with, or George Romero, they started out with stuff like Night of the Living Dead or Halloween or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Piranha. And these are all like movies that, you know, they were very low budget at the time. There was nothing. It was word of mouth that made them popular, you know, that made them into a just worldwide success. And now they're cult films that are unrivaled, you know, in their popularity. Like, it's hard to believe like that John Carpenter put out The Thing in 1980, I think it was, maybe 81. Right. But nobody really liked it. Like at the time, like everybody was, you know, most people were like, oh, it's gory and it's simple and it yada yada yada. But now it's considered one of the greatest horror movies that has ever been made. And I watch it every Halloween, and I'm blown away by it every time. It's a flawless, I mean, absolutely flawless horror movie. I put it up there with Jaws. I put it up there with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know, and again, you know, Jaws, big studio film, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, little tiny grindhouse film made by a auteur in Texas, Toby Hooper, you know, on a shoestring budget. But, you know, it just turns into this juggernaut out of word of mouth. And changed the face of horror. That one movie from him completely altered the entire landscape of horror films. You know, everything before that, there wasn't anything that was as shocking and as brutal. I mean, there were a few scenes here and there in movies, but after that, you're getting stuff like Last House on the Left and Children Don't Play with Dead Things, and I mean, all these crazy movies that just, you know, spiraled out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But I have a really love for these kind of films. They're, you know, many of them, most of them are B movies and have a B movie aesthetic. Sometimes they're terrible. Sometimes they go around from being bad and come all the way around to being good because they're so honest, they're so genuine, and they think they're making the greatest thing that you've ever, you know, everything that's ever been put to film. But it's so bad, but the fact that it's genuine and honest, it turns it into something, you know, really special. So when you talk about sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'll say that there's a kind of a, if you saw Tarantino's Death Proof, which was part of his Grindhouse, I guess homage he did a few years ago. There's this whole genre of car chase. there's a car chase genre, and when I was a kid, I loved the 70s Grindhouse car chase. Death Race 2000.
Vanishing Point.
There's a Vanishing Point. There's a great movie called Race with the Devil, which had Peter Fonda and Warren Oates in it, which was it had devil worshippers, RVs, shotguns. I mean, it had car chase scenes. That was a great movie back in my childhood. I loved anything that was a car chase, grindhouse type movie.
Dirty Larry, Crazy Mary.
Yes. And I mean, those are kind of the spiritual fathers to Fast and Furious now. Except, I'm sorry, they're better than Fast and Furious. All these movies are better than Fast and Furious at the time. And those were. I mean, Gone in 60 Seconds. That was Ron Howard's first movie, right? That was his first directed movie, and he went on to become famous. But yes, anything with car chase in it that was low budget, I was in. It was in on those in the 70s.
Oh yeah, I mean, and you know, Mad Max, believe it or not, that's what they call Aussie exploitation or Oz exploitation. But that is absolutely a grindhouse film. The first one, Mad Max, because it was made on a very low budget. It was made in a foreign country, and then when it came over here, it wasn't showing in the big movie theaters that most people went to. It was showing primarily in second run theaters and in bad neighborhoods. That's the kind of places that was showing at when it first got here. And it it really turned a corner with VHS when VHS came out, and with Road Warrior, everybody went back to revisit Mad Max. So then Mad Max and the Road Warrior really became a thing. And they had Thunderdome, and then Fury Road, which Fury Road is just, and people will differ with me, and that's cool. But I think it's one of the greatest action films in the last 20 years. Like, it's near flawless, really. It's just action.
It's a really good movie.
It
got hammered by a lot of people because they felt like that. And this is dumb too. So they felt like that Mad Max was a secondary character in his own movie. He was the secondary character in every movie he was in, except for the first one, Mad Max. But that was the whole point. Is that he's like the man with no name back in the Eastwood movies, where something's going on. Then Eastwood comes to town and then shoots everybody up and leaves. And that's kind of how Mad Max was in all his movies. He just comes along, he helps people, and he moves on and just does whatever. And so. That people don't realize that's how that character always was. That character was that. So
it's just a cool George Miller, the guy that made those films. He made all of them. He makes fantastic action films just in general, but his Mad Max stuff is just right. I mean, he has very few equals in that arena. And he's a great world builder too. It's just some really good stuff. But I mean, I could tell you my top 10, my top 20, my least favorite, my bet. we could go all over the place. So.
Well, Rocky's like, can you define Grindhouse? I think you've defined Grindhouse by talking about Grindhouse.
Yeah.
I can go a little bit more into it. In addition to what I said about like kind of the time frame that fell in and the kind of movie theaters that it was in, or sorry, the aesthetic of the whole thing, as far as like, you know, being these movies that showed in second run films and second run film venues and in like basically theaters in bad neighborhoods. A Grindhouse back in the day, there's some misinformation about what a Grindhouse was. A lot of people for a while were saying that Grindhouses were these ex like burlesque places where the word, you know, people would grind on you, and then they became movie theaters. But Eric, you're a New Yorker. I mean, I'm sure that you remember 42nd Street.
Oh my God!
You know? And all those theaters along 42nd Street, and the porno shops, and the how horrible and crazy and you know, nuts that was. But also like how that was a real part of New York's, or at least the city's, like the ebb and flow, like the persona of that area. So when you say Grindhouse, it's all those old theaters that used to show these great movies, you know, where the curtains would come across, you know, and you know, the movie would come up and there was a butler in a little hat. Well, all those places eventually got run down, and you know, all the big movies, the cineplexes and stuff came in, and the movie theaters moved out of those old theaters. But then you've got all this real estate with, you know, all this crown molding and red velvet ropes and the whole 9 yards. So people moved in, and they would have these 24-hour movie theaters where they would show, you know, cheap movies, just as cheap as they could get them. You know, they were martial arts films from China and Japan. There were just a lot of blaxploitation theater movies, you know, Shaft and Black Belt Jones and The Mac and Coffee and Abby and Blackula, things like that. All that stuff would show in these theaters. But then you would have stuff like just small independent studio movies. You get stuff like Romero's Night of the Living Dead, and you know, you had that stuff for a long time. And then the boom of the 80s comes around, and Grindhouses are kind of in decline, but you're still getting stuff like, you know, Night of the Comet and, you know, Night of the Creeps, and, you know, all these kind of you know, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Evil Dead, things like this that are showing up in these theaters, and they can pack as many people as they would want to into these theaters. And a lot of times you would get bums and junkies and prostitutes and stuff that would just go in there and would just hang out. You know, you'd find people that would, you know, fall asleep, and they got to be real seedy places, you know, like, so not only could you go in and see over the course of a day, you could see 6 movies for the, you know, I don't know, $2, but you know, you never knew who was going to be in there.
The admission, I didn't go to any on 42nd Street, but there was one out in beyond Forest Hills. It was a theater that would run, you know. Listen, sometimes it was second tier movies. It was the independent stuff that was a little like crazy. Sometimes it was a big film that was a year out of theaters, because back in the day, when if you missed something in the theater, you had to wait to catch it on commercial TV in a couple of years, butchered by the commercials. And if you missed it then, maybe you could see it again in a year. So, and I remember, I believe it was $1.50 to get in, because they were getting these movies cheap.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to make their money on the concessions.
Yep.
And that was your rat-eating popcorn, your lukewarm soda that's half flat. But that's where they were making their money on. And I remember going out and catching movies in the 80s in places like that, because that's as far as your allowance is going to take you.
You might see Evil Dead as one feature, and then it might be the Devil and Miss Jones. Might be that might be the
Right.
next feature in some of these places. 1 minute it could be Enter the Dragon, like 4 years after it first premiered.
Well, yeah, it wasn't just because there was some genre crossovers. Blaxploitation was a genre crossover. Kung fu martial arts stuff was a genre crossover. So a lot of those movies, like movies like I don't know how big you are in Blaxploitation, but like Coffee and Foxy Brown and all that stuff. That was seen as the grindhouse too. And, I love that stuff too. But also the martial arts stuff of the 70s. A lot of that stuff is really cheaply made, but it's very action packed and kick ass too. And so there was so much genre crossover. But like you said, there's also this a lot of the grindhouse had this really sleazy kind of sex,
very much so,
softcore sex type stuff. So you'll be watching one of those movies and for some even Enter the Dragon, classic movie, but there's just some inexplicable weird sex scenes in there that don't make any sense. You just want to watch Bruce Lee kicking the shit out of people, and then they have to show naked girls. When I was a kid, that's what I was thinking. What do they show these naked girls for? I want to see.
Now I know why they showed them.
Yeah, well, so the beginning of those of those genre films. I said the beginning, but the beginning as far as where the term grindhouse is being used, you had a lot of unwed mother in trouble, teenage girl is pregnant, what will she do, those kind of movies. And then it was like a whole biker craze where it was like here come the Hells Angels, or here come werewolves on wheels, just you never knew, it was there was like a whole hippie exploitation where after the whole Charles Manson thing, it was any kind of there were hippie killers and hippie mysteries, and there was all there's a whole thing against hippies, but there was all these ups and downs and turns, and then on top of all that you have subgenres within all those genres. There's the Hicksploitation, where it's all about dangerous hillbillies, from the South, who don't have your best interests in mind. So you end, it's you got stuff like The Hills Have Eyes, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or Gator Bait, or those crazy kind of movies. But then there's a whole nunsploitation thing where it's possessed nuns and possessed Catholic priests,
right?
Anything that was kind of religious based. There's a whole subgenre of that, and it really goes deep into those crazy offshoot genre films. And then you get cult films too, I'm sure you guys have all seen The Warriors, but that's this classic, grindhouse film. The Warriors come out and play. That's a classic, movie where New York City is like an extra character in the, it's so prominent that it's a character in the movie. Same with The Last Dragon, with Bruce Leroy. That's set in New York, but it's just such a quintessential early 80s New York movie, because New York is like a character, like an extra character in the movie. That's how profound it is, how upfront the city is. Really cool stuff. I mean, I get way deep in the geek weeds with that kind of stuff.
We're gonna have to bring you on with Glenn one time. I'll just take a step back and I'll just handle the comments of the three of you. Do the voodoo that you do.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What was cool about, I was saying, in the 70s, what was cool is I had a friend that had HBO, which was brand new in the 70s, and they didn't have a lot of stuff to show. So actually, HBO in the 70s, there's a lot of grindhouse stuff. That's where I first saw Death Race 2000, stuff like that, because they didn't have a lot of content to show. There wasn't a lot of movies, I guess, that let them have the rights to it. And so HBO was actually where I really discovered grindhouse when I was a kid.
What's that? There's a
lot of those kind of movies, a lot of the really cheaply made 70s exploitation flicks.
There's an old joke. I forget the comic, but he always said HBO stands for "Hey, Beastmaster's on."
And if you watched HBO in the early 80s, yes, that was absolutely true.
And here's the thing too, I live in Queens, and growing up in Queens, we didn't get cable until like the late 90s in your private houses. Maybe apartment buildings had it, but if you're in a private house or two-family home, we didn't get cable until like the late 90s, early aughts. So you got HBO with a microwave antenna. But the thing was, you didn't have to rent your antenna from HBO. So it was rampant, and I think the statute of limitations is gone. We had an HBO. My father bought an HBO antenna or microwave antenna, put on the roof. You had to steer it, and twice a year go up because it shifted with the wind. Fix it. You'd watch all the fights because that's what HBO was big for. You got to watch, some amazing boxing matches. Fraggle Rock. But a lot of really great science fiction and fantasy movies. You just had to pay attention to what was on. And it was really great until, I don't know, I was like 17. I go down to the local bakery to get like bagels for breakfast for the family. And I come back and there's a gentleman on my stoop with a clipboard and a jacket that says HBO security on it. Like, do you live here? I went, yeah. Are you the owner? I'm like 17. I'm like, no, I just rent. Well, give this to the owner. And it basically was, you must remove your antenna or face the legal consequences. So the antenna got removed and placed in the attic by the window, and we continued having HBO until they shut down the service there. So.
Remember when you would get videotapes from the VHS rental store, and there was always the part right before the movie would come on about the $10,000 fine and up to 5-6 years in jail and prosecution by the FBI, and it was like, oh no, man, whatever you do, don't copy a tape.
Well, because the FBI might get involved.
Yes, they have nothing better to do. Exactly.
Yeah. Please.
Well, we may have, maybe for North Texas one of these years we may have to have a grindhouse seminar. So for all the guys that do grindhouse modules, we need to get them all in there. And,
I actually wanted to talk to you about this off air, but since we're talking about it now, let me shoot this idea to you and Gary, and tell me what you think. Okay. I used to see this at festivals in the early 2000s on kind of through the early teens, but cult films, they would have at these festivals, they would have these tents where you could go and relax. It would be like a nice, it's July in Tennessee, and you've been out watching AC/DC all morning, and so you can go. But then you're just dying of heat, so you would go and lay in these big, huge tents that were air conditioned, and you could watch like Real Genius, or you could watch like Enter the Dragon, like whatever was playing. It was like a relax. But I thought from that, and with like the evolution of like the Alamo Draft House and comedians who kind of break down films and do things, wouldn't it be neat if at North Texas there was a block at just one of the nights, not every night, just one night, where you picked like one like a movie like Beastmaster, or a science fiction film or an apocalyptic film or something like that, but something that's kind of low budget and fun, and like Death Race 2000. Like that's another great one that you could do. Troll 2, or just something that everybody knows is not serious but kind of fun. And then the people who weren't really doing anything, you could go and there'd be like somebody would get up and introduce it, but then like everybody could just hang out in this room and watch this movie together. Like I said, whatever it might be, and it's just something a little different when you're burnt out. Maybe you've had 6 games already. And you're just like, let me get a beer and go check this movie out. And
I think people nowadays when that happens, I think people just go to the bar and hang out. But one of the issues with that is that I used to go to a lot of sci-fi conventions in the 70s, and I'm sorry, the 80s. And what's great is they always had a movie room where movies were running 24 hours. You could go in and you'd sit in and there'd be a movie running. And they don't do that anymore. A lot of it's because of copyright issues, or because it turned out that when they were showing these movies, they weren't paying anything back to the actual theaters, the movies. And it just got it got real murky. And I think that'd be our problem with that, because you obviously couldn't charge anything, because that's where it gets really murky. But I think the biggest thing is we've tried to schedule things at night, and everybody just wants to go to the bar and drink, and they all end up at the bar, and so you have something kind of planned, and they're like, yeah, we're just going to go drink at the bar, and so I think the bar usually serves that purpose instead of being able to go to a movie and watch a movie. But
yeah, I mean, I think your only way around the copyright is if you made it transformative. Like if you turned it into a Rocky Horror Picture Show experience where people are acting out the scenes along with the movie and people are making.
I think it's okay if you don't tell. Though it's okay actually if you don't. Like if you just had a movie and it's just on and you're not charging any admission and you're not really advertising it, it's fine. Right. You can do that, but you can't. No longer can you. I mean, I remember, like I said, I used to go to sci-fi conventions. They would have 24-hour movie rooms. You go in there, like Levi said, whenever you want to break. Oh, I just have an hour to sit down. You walk in and Mars Attacks would be on, or right. Original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and you just sit there for an hour. You're like, oh, this is cool. I haven't seen this in a while. And then when you're rested or when it's time to go, you go. But I don't see that anymore. I think one of the reasons you don't see that much anymore is because of copyright reasons. I don't think people like their movies to be shown there with, without any money going back in their pockets. They don't want you to show.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll put this on the table. If you ever want to do anything like that, I will do a whole program for you. I will set you up with some of the greatest grindhouse and fantasy movies that you've
maybe we just need another convention. We just need Mike and Levi's Grindhouse celebration, and we'll just do our own convention. It's just going to be Grindhouse movies, and we'll have Tarantino come in, and it'd be great.
Yeah,
Wrong Texas City, my friend.
By the way, Gary says the lecture hall is underutilized, so we could do it.
We probably should do more than the lecture hall, but we're actually going to have a lot of seminars this time. Or at least I awesome. Keep hearing from people that they want to do seminars. So we'll see how many seminars we actually have this year. So I'm hoping we have more than we usually do. That was one of the problems with seminars is that we always had seminars scheduled. People were gaming all the time, or they're doing something like, oh, I'm going to go eat then. And so our seminars were never heavily as utilized as much as we wanted them to be. And ironically, the most successful seminars we had are usually early in the morning because nobody has anything planned. And so 8:00, sure, I'll eat breakfast and then walk over to the seminar. So usually when you get later in the day, everybody's going to go eat lunch or they're in a game, and they just, these seminars are really, really very sparsely attended because of that.
Right. But hey, I know it's not a movie con, so it's a gaming con, but I don't know that I've ever had a gaming experience where somebody didn't have a movie quote or didn't talk about something that happened in a movie or equate what they were doing to something that happened in a movie. So I think there's definitely some crossover there.
I don't think there's been a gaming convention ever in history that didn't have a Monty Python the Holy Grail quote at some point in the.
Oh, hey, maybe I'll have a copy of my Kickstarter game and we can play Monty Python. Would be a great convention game. By the way, Gary, in all caps, Breakfast Buffet is back this year at North Texas.
Yes.
Very cool. Yes. Rach is already excited. I'm excited. The buffet was always right there. And then it fueled you up.
They did.
It was a good value.
I think they realized that. They need to bring that back. That's good.
So...
Well, because their breakfast was terrible last year's. I mean, let's just face it. It was not up to snuff. And, the pandemic really put a stake in the heart of so many people's health, but it messed up the con experience quite a bit. And here it is 3 years later, we're finally coming back from that. And cons are getting, we stayed in a hotel, a couple of hotels lately where they actually had room service again. Remember when they didn't have room service for like 2 years? Like, oh no, just throw your dirty towels outside the door. And by the way, we're not cleaning your room.
Yeah. You need toilet paper. There's a reason why we put a phone in the bathroom now. Just call and...
But now you actually have full service hotels again. We're like, wow, this is awesome. This is how it used to be 5 years ago. This is so great. So, maybe we'll have we're probably getting the breakfast buffet back after all these years, but we're going to have food trucks still. We still have food trucks. We're looking at interviewing some food trucks. And so, they've been a hit because it is kind of far to walk to all the other, or to travel to the other restaurants.
Anything but Denny's.
And so it's good to have the food trucks.
And Denny's usually means that your secondary room will be the men's room if you're a man.
That Denny.
Just saying, it goes down very easily and comes out.
Yeah, and, you know, there's good Denny's. That's just not one of them across the street from the hotel. I mean, there are good Denny's out there, but that's not a good Denny because they don't have to be. They're only restaurant within walking distance of like 5 hotels, and then you have to go 2 miles to get to the other. There's restaurants about 2 miles away, but that's too far to walk in June in
Change
Texas.
the oil. What are we? An auto mechanic? We don't need to change oil. Come on!
Your fries are supposed to taste like fish.
As long as I can see the crumbs on the bottom of the fryer, I know the oil is clean enough.
It's good. It's good enough. Yeah.
And this is just coming from. I only ate there once, and the food tasted really good. And I made it back to my room just in time for to do what I had to do.
Wow, that was tough.
That was competition with Rach. So it's like
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was like I felt like Winnie the Pooh. I've got a rumbly in my tummy.
Well, that's what those little baskets are for. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's like it's like it's gonna be a scene from Aliens. Which that just came up because Gary was saying that they were thinking about the Aliens movie, so I just had to throw that out there. I'm having a great time. I would keep this rolling until 11 o'clock, but then I'd have to drop into another live stream, and I'd probably be insane. I need to besides do like my after Denny's trip after this.
Oh my God, you're right. He's got another. Yeah, Mr. Big Time here. He's got another live stream after this one. Jeez.
Yeah. Joe the lawyer. Let me see if I can actually get Joe's live stream up here, or Joe's channel. I'll get Joe's channel up. I'll at 11 o'clock. Joe is doing a live stream, and I believe that.
Why so late? I mean, he's on the East Coast. Why is he having that late?
Because I think we were trying to work it around Matt Jackson and me.
Oh, okay.
So here is Joe's live stream. It's his channel. Listen, if you hear Joe every other Friday on this channel, Joe's opinionated. Remember, he was blogging before I was, and he got banned from N-World for his blog post back in the day because he criticized N-World. So that tells you
freedom of speech, man. Come on. Yeah.
So
no nepotism there at all.
No.
No.
Not at all. So I believe the conversation tonight, because it's been a conversation amongst my various co-hosts on every other Friday night, is going to be dealing with a certain YouTube channel. I don't know. Maybe it's changed. I don't know if that's still going to be the topic. But it's obviously not going to be dealing about this YouTube channel, but some other YouTube channel. So we'll see. Okay. I'm being vague because.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, I got you. I see where you're going.
I'll tell these guys afterwards. But, folks, thank you all. Thank you to Levi. Geez, Levi,
thanks, Levi. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I love being on, so it's always a good time.
Once again, next week, Kickstarter. It's going to be out the 18th. I'm sorry.
13th.
13th.
Okay.
Yeah. Week from Tuesday, yes.
See, he could be our Joan Rivers. He could be like, we need a guest. Okay.
I get that reference.
All right, yeah. You see, you're at the right age. You get it all. Folks, thank you to all the members of our audience. Your comments have been great. I know I fell behind in the end. I apologize. We're in the midst of the end. If you're in New York, they tell you the world's collapsing and you could get like 17 different contagious diseases. Use your common sense. All right, it's been doing fine by me. Hopefully, it works for you. Other than that, be safe, be well. God bless. Roll those dice. Don't let Mike yawn at you because make sure you yawn in his face at North Texas. Go up to him, yawn in his face. All right, folks. Thank you very much. Tomorrow, if you're on our Discord, we do a hangout at 9 p.m. Eastern time, and the random generated party will be 8 p.m. on Friday. And like I said, catch more of this ugly yapper in about an hour on Joe the Lawyer's channel. All right, folks. Later.
Bye.